this is Ellie, and I just want to talk to you about the hidden timeline on the Fatima timeline. It's hidden because it is about the births and the deaths that revolve around Pope John Paul II, Sister Faustina, Francisco, Jacinta, and Lucia. If you look at their births and their deaths, and the anniversary of their births and deaths, you'll see that there's a hidden timeline that leads all the way to 2038. So, on the Tomb of Guadalupe, it shows 1903 to 2020. 1903 was the year that Pope Leo XIII died, and Pope Pius X was elected. So the hidden timeline on the Toma are the time period between 1903 to 2020 can be best explained through the hidden timeline from Fatima, which revolves around Pope John Paul II, Sister Faustina, and the three visionaries of Fatima. So if you look at this hidden timeline from Fatima, it starts out with Sister Faustina, her birth in 1905. And then we have 1907 is Sister Lucia's birth. 1908 is Francisco's birth, and 1910 is Jacinta's birth. Then we go to 1919, the death of Francisco. 1920, the birth of Pope John Paul II and the death of Jacinta of Fatima. Then we have 1938, which is the death of Sister Faustina. We also, what I forgot was 1917, which would be the Three Secrets of Fatima. 1920 would be the birth of Pope John Paul II, the death of Jacinta, and of course, like I said, 1919 was the death of Francisco. And then we go to, of course, we have World War I, World War II, and we get up to the next date, which is 2005, which is the death of Pope John Paul II and Sister Lucia Fatima. They both died in the same year. Then we have the 100th anniversary of the death of Francisco in 2019. 2020 is the 100th anniversary of the birth of Pope John Paul II, and 2020 is the 100th anniversary of the death of Jacinta. 2020 was the year that much happened with COVID and the lockdowns, and most people see that as the start date of the apocalyptic times. It's also was a year found on the Tomb of Guadalupe. And then we have we go all the way to 2038. We have the 100th anniversary of Sister Faustina's death, but before that we have 2031, which is the 500th anniversary of Guadalupe. So that's the hidden timeline from Fatima, which explains the years between 1903 and 2020 found on the Tomb of Guadalupe. So as you can see, the deaths and the births of Sister Faustina, Pope John Paul II, and the three visionaries of Fatima seem to be interlocked between each other. Either, like I said, if you look at 1919, Francisco died, Jacinta died 1920, Pope John Paul II was born that year, who was a spark to bring the fire that our Lord talked about, the spark needed for divine mercy. And then we can see very definitely, we go forward in the future, and we see in 2005, Pope John Paul II dies the same year as Sister Lucia of Fatima. Now, just think, let's quickly go back and see 1919. Francisco dies, 1920, Jacinta dies, and Pope John Paul II is born in 1920. 1920 is also the year that the first country legalizes abortion. Very first country. And who was that? It was Russia. And what was Our Lady in 1917 warning about? She said that the errors of Russia would be multiplied. And that would be one of the signs of the end, that errors from Russia would be multiplied. Abortion and infanticide was legalized in 1920. America followed in 1973. And as I said, we'll skip forward. 2005, Sister Lucia dies the same year as Pope John Paul II. And we can look back to 1919 and 1920, both Jacinta and Francisco die right around almost the same time as Pope John Paul II is born. And that's not a coincidence. None of that is a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that the 2038 prophecy about the Pope crossing the sea happens to fall the same year that the 100th anniversary of Sister Faustina falls. So you can see that Our Lady of Fatima gave this invisible timeline to show us, to give us an idea of where we are in the apocalyptic timeline. And I will talk more about this in the future. God bless.